She was born into privilege, raised to believe that love had a price tag, and some people could never afford it. Charlotte Hale, CEO's daughter and society princess, never imagined that her cruelest words would come back to haunt her in the most unexpected way. When her luxury car breaks down on a lonely highway, the very man she dismisses as beneath her becomes her unlikely savior. But Marcus Reed isn't just any mechanic. He's about to shatter everything she thought she knew about worth, dignity, and the power of a heart that refuses to be bought. Now, as forbidden passion ignites and family secrets unravel, Charlotte faces an impossible choice that will either destroy her gilded cage forever or cost her the only real love she's ever known. If you're watching this from anywhere around the world, hit that subscribe button and tell me what country you're tuning in from, because this story of love crossing all boundaries is about to take you on a ride you'll never forget. The coastal highway stretched before Charlotte Hale like a ribbon of silver, her sleek coupe purring as she navigated the curves. The evening sun painted the ocean in shades of gold, but she barely noticed the beauty. Her mind was fixed on the board meeting tomorrow, the quarterly reports stacked in her passenger seat, and her father's expectations weighing on her shoulders like a lead blanket. At 27, Charlotte, Lottie to the few who knew her well, had spent her entire life being Victor Hale's perfect daughter. Polished, controlled, everything in its proper place. Her blonde hair was always smooth, her clothes always pressed, her emotions always carefully tucked away where no one could see them. The phone rang through her car's speakers. "Hi, Dad. How did the Morrison presentation go?" Victor's voice filled the car, businesslike even at 7 in the evening. "Better than expected. They're interested in expanding the partnership." Lottie checked her mirrors and moved into the right lane. "I should have the contract draft ready for review by Friday." "Excellent. And don't forget about Saturday's charity gala. Wesley will pick you up at 7. Lottie's jaw tightened slightly. Wesley Grant was everything her father approved of: Harvard MBA, old family money, and a smile that never seemed quite real. "Dad, I wish you wouldn't just assume—" A sharp, grinding sound cut through her words. The steering wheel jerked in her hands, and the engine made a horrible coughing noise before the whole car shuddered to a stop on the shoulder. "What was that?" Victor's voice crackled through the speakers. Lottie's heart hammered as she turned on the hazard lights. Cars whooshed past, their headlights already glowing in the fading light. She felt exposed and foolish sitting there in her expensive car that had apparently decided to break down at the worst possible moment. "My car just died," she said, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "I'm on Highway 1, about 10 miles south of the city. I'll send a car service. No, it's fine. I'll call a tow truck." She fumbled for her phone, scrolling through contacts. "Though honestly, Dad, I could never fall for a poor mechanic or anything like that. Can you imagine? Some guy in dirty coveralls trying to—" She stopped mid-sentence as a pickup truck pulled up behind her, its amber lights flashing. The logo on the side read Delgado Auto Repair in cheerful blue letters. "I have to go," she told her father quickly. "Someone's here to help." The truck's door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, with broad shoulders and dark skin, he moved with the quiet confidence of someone comfortable in his own space. His work shirt was clean despite the grease stains on his hands, and when he approached her window, his expression was calm and professional. Lottie's cheeks burned as she realized he might have heard her comment through the open windows. She ended the call and rolled down her window, praying the ground would swallow her whole. "Evening, ma'am," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I'm Marcus Reed from Delgado Auto. Looks like you're having some trouble." The kindness in his eyes made her feel even worse about what she'd just said. Yes, it just stopped, made some awful noises and died. Marcus nodded, pulling a small flashlight from his pocket. Mind if I take a look under the hood? Please. She popped the hood release, watching in her side mirror as he moved to the front of the car. She climbed out, her heels clicking on the asphalt. The ocean breeze whipped her hair around her face as she joined him at the front of the car. Up close, she could see the gentle focus in his dark eyes as he examined the engine, his hands moving with practiced skill. When did you first notice the grinding sound? He asked, not looking up from his work. Just before it stopped. Maybe 30 seconds? She wrapped her arms around herself against the cool air. Is it bad? Could be a few things. Marcus straightened up, wiping his hands on a clean rag. Your transmission sensor's failing. I can get you going with a temporary fix, but you'll want to bring it in for proper repair within the next day or two. He returned to his truck and came back with a small toolkit. Lottie watched as he worked, noting how he explained each step without talking down to her, how he checked and double-checked his work. When a semi-truck roared past, he stepped slightly closer to shield her from the wind it created. There, he said finally, closing the hood. That should get you home safely. Just keep it under 55 and avoid any hard acceleration. How much do I owe you? Lottie reached for her purse, pulling out her wallet. Marcus shook his head. No charge for a roadside safety fix, but you will need that sensor replaced. Could run you about $250 for parts and labor. She pulled out 3 crisp hundreds, holding them toward him. Please, you came out here, fixed my car, kept me safe. It's the least I can do. I appreciate the offer, but no thank you. His voice remained kind but firm. This is just what we do. Lottie felt something twist in her chest. When was the last time someone had refused her money? When had anyone done something for her without wanting something in return? Marcus walked around the car, checking her tires. Your spare's a little low on air. There's a gas station about 3 miles up that has a free air pump. And ma'am? He met her eyes. Highway 1 at night can be tricky. Maybe stick to the main roads until you get that sensor fixed. The simple concern in his voice undid something in her. Here was a complete stranger who'd heard her cruel words, yet he'd helped her anyway. He could have driven right past, left her stranded and embarrassed. Instead, he'd stopped, fixed her car, and refused payment. Thank you, she managed, her voice smaller than she intended. Really, thank you. Marcus nodded, stepping back toward his truck. Drive safe. She watched him secure his tools and pull away, his truck disappearing into the growing darkness. Only then did she get back in her car, her hands shaking as she started the engine. It purred to life like nothing had happened. The drive home passed in a blur of shame and confusion. She kept hearing her own words echoing in her head. I could never fall for a poor mechanic. How arrogant she'd sounded. How small and ugly those words seemed now, after Marcus Reed had shown her more genuine kindness than she'd received from anyone in her social circle in months. By the time she reached her downtown high-rise, her cheeks still felt hot with embarrassment. She parked in her assigned spot in the underground garage and rode the elevator to the 32nd floor in silence. Her apartment was exactly what people expected from Victor Hale's daughter. All clean lines and expensive furniture, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city lights. But tonight, the space felt cold and empty. She kicked off her heels and padded to the kitchen, where she found Nina Park loading the dishwasher. Nina had been her assistant for 3 years, but somewhere along the way, she'd become the closest thing to a real friend Lottie had. Rough day? Nina asked, noting Lottie's expression. You could say that. Lottie slumped against the marble counter and told Nina everything. the broken car, the mechanic, and most importantly, the awful thing she'd said right before he'd appeared. Nina dried her hands on a dish towel, her dark eyes thoughtful. Did he hear you? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Lottie covered her face with her hands. God, Nina, what kind of person says something like that? He was so decent, professional. And I was sitting there talking about people like him as if they weren't even human. You were stressed and speaking without thinking, Nina said gently. It happens to everyone. Does it? Because I feel like it says something pretty horrible about me that those words were even in my head to begin with. Nina was quiet for a moment, loading the last of the glasses into the dishwasher. You know what you could do? If you end up taking your car to his shop, you could apologize. Actually talk to him like a person. Would that make it better or worse? I mean, what if he did hear me? How do you apologize for calling someone's entire livelihood beneath you? Honestly. You apologize honestly. Nina turned to face her. Look, Lottie, I've known you for 3 years. You're not cruel. You're just sheltered. Your dad's raised you to think about appearances and status and what looks right. But that doesn't mean you can't learn to see things differently. Lottie's phone buzzed on the counter, a text from her father. Reminder, gala Saturday with Wesley. Black tie. Important investors will be there. She showed the message to Nina, who grimaced. Wesley again? Dad's convinced we're perfect for each other. Same background, same schools, same everything. Lottie sank onto one of the bar stools. Sometimes I feel like I'm just playing a part in someone else's life. The dutiful daughter, the perfect girlfriend, the ideal heiress. But underneath all that, I don't even know who I really am. Nina sat down across from her. Maybe that's why tonight rattled you so much. That mechanic, Marcus, he saw right through all your polish and helped you anyway. Not because of who your father is or what you could do for him. Just because you needed help. I don't deserve that kind of kindness. Not after what I said. Maybe not, Nina agreed, making Lottie wince. But that's what makes it kindness instead of a transaction. He didn't help you because you deserved it. He helped you because that's who he is. Later that evening, after Nina had gone home, Lottie found herself standing in front of the framed photograph on her living room mantel. Her mother smiled back at her, caught in a moment of genuine laughter during a family vacation when Lottie was 12. Elizabeth Hale had died in a car accident when Lottie was 15, taking with her the warmth that had once filled their house. Mom, she whispered to the photograph, I think I've become someone you wouldn't recognize, someone you might not even like. The admission hung in the air like a weight. Elizabeth Hale had volunteered at homeless shelters and food banks. She treated everyone with the same gentle respect, from janitors to judges. She would have been mortified by her daughter's words tonight. Lottie's phone rang, startling her out of her thoughts. Victor's name appeared on the screen. Hi, Dad. Just checking that you made it home safely. Did the tow truck get you sorted out? Actually, a mechanic from a local shop stopped and fixed it on the spot. Temporary repair, but it got me home. Good, though you'll want to take it somewhere reputable for the real fix. I can have Charles get you an appointment at the Mercedes dealership downtown. The mechanic mentioned their shop could handle it. Delgado Auto. Do you know them? There was a pause. Actually, yes. They've done some work for the company fleet. Honest operation, fair prices. If they can fit you in quickly, that might be easier than waiting for an appointment downtown. Lottie felt a small spark of hope. Okay, I'll call them tomorrow. After she hung up, she looked up Delgado Auto online. Their website was simple but professional, with photos of a clean, well-organized shop and smiling employees. Marcus Reed was listed as their lead diagnostic technician and restoration specialist. The testimonials praised the shop's integrity and quality work. One review caught her attention. Marcus found and returned my grandmother's ring that had fallen under my seat. Didn't ask for anything in return. These are good people. Lottie stared at the screen, remembering how Marcus had refused her tip, how he'd positioned himself between her and the traffic, how he'd taken the time to check her tires and give her safety advice. Maybe Nina was right. Maybe some people really did help others simply because it was the right thing to do. She closed the laptop and got ready for bed, but sleep was a long time coming. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard her own voice saying those awful words. But she also heard Marcus's calm, kind response. Drive safe. Tomorrow, she would take her car to Delgado Auto. And maybe, if she could find the courage, she would try to apologize for being someone she didn't want to be anymore. The morning sun streamed through her bedroom windows, painting everything in shades of gold. It was a new day, a chance to do better. Lottie pulled on a simple navy dress and flats, choosing comfort over impression for once. As she prepared to leave for Delgado Auto, she caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. Without the usual armor of designer suits and heels, she looked younger. More like the girl in her mother's photographs, before life had taught her to build walls around her heart. Maybe it was time to start tearing those walls down. The drive to Delgado Auto took Lottie through a part of the city she rarely visited. The buildings here were older, with character lines etched into their brick faces. Small businesses lined the streets, a family bakery with hand-painted signs, a bookstore with books stacked in the windows, a cafe with mismatched chairs on the sidewalk. It felt real in a way her sterile downtown neighborhood didn't. Delgado Auto sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd, a 2-story building with large bay doors and a small parking lot. The shop looked exactly like its website photos, clean, organized, and busy. Through the open garage doors, she could see mechanics working on various cars, their movements efficient and practiced. Lottie parked near the front entrance and sat for a moment, gathering her courage. Through the windshield, she could see a woman with graying hair and kind eyes behind the front counter. This must be Rosa Delgado, the owner whose picture was on the website. The morning air was crisp as she walked toward the building, carrying the weight of her planned apology like stones in her chest. A bell chimed as she pushed open the glass door. "Good morning, honey," Rosa said, looking up from a computer screen. "How can we help you?" "Hi, I'm Charlotte Hale. I was hoping to get my car looked at. Marcus Reed helped me yesterday when it broke down, and he said I'd need the sensor replaced." Rosa's face brightened. "Oh yes, Marcus mentioned you might stop by. Let me get him for you." Before Lottie could respond, Rosa called toward the garage. "Marcus, your roadside rescue is here." Heat flooded Lottie's cheeks. She heard footsteps, and then Marcus appeared from one of the service bays. In the daylight, she could see him more clearly. Probably early 30s, with intelligent dark eyes and calloused hands that spoke of honest work. He wore clean coveralls with his name embroidered on the chest. "Miss Hale?" he said with a slight nod. "How did the car run last night?" "Fine, just like you said it would." She took a deep breath, feeling Rosa's curious gaze. "Actually, before we talk about the repair, I owe you an apology." Marcus tilted his head slightly, and she forced herself to continue. "Yesterday, right before you stopped to help me, I was on the phone with my father. I said something ugly about mechanics, about people like you." The words felt thick in her throat. "I don't know if you heard me, but either way, I was wrong. What I said was wrong, and I'm sorry." The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Rosa glanced between them, clearly piecing together the situation. Marcus finally spoke, his voice measured but not unkind. Hard days bring out hard words sometimes. We all say things we don't mean when we're stressed. But I think I did mean it in that moment. That's what makes it so awful. Lottie's voice was barely above a whisper. You helped me anyway. You were kind to me anyway. That says something about who you are. What I said says something about who I've been. Rosa cleared her throat gently. Honey, recognizing a mistake is the first step to fixing it. Marcus nodded slowly. I appreciate the apology. That took courage. So, would you be willing to work on my car? I understand if you'd rather not. Of course we'll work on your car. Rosa, can you write up an estimate for a transmission sensor replacement? As Rosa pulled up the information on her computer, Marcus walked with Lottie toward the service bay where her car would go. If you don't mind me asking, what made you decide to apologize? You could have just taken your car somewhere else. Lottie considered the question carefully. My mother. She died when I was 15, but if she could have heard what I said yesterday, she would have been heartbroken. She raised me to treat people with respect, regardless of their job or background. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I'm sorry about your mother. Thank you. She would have liked you, I think. She always said you could tell a lot about a person by how they treated strangers when there was nothing in it for them. Marcus smiled for the first time since she'd arrived, and the expression transformed his whole face. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. Lottie looked around the garage, noting the organized tool stations and the care with which the mechanics handled each vehicle. How long have you worked here? 5 years. Rosa took a chance on me when I was fresh out of trade school. I've been lead tech for 2 years now. Do you like it? The work, I mean. Marcus seemed surprised by the question. I love it. Every car is a puzzle to solve. Plus, there's something satisfying about fixing things, making them work better than they did before. He paused. Though I suppose that sounds simple to someone like you. Someone like me? You know, executive type, corner office, important decisions. Lottie felt a pang at his words. Can I tell you a secret? Most days, I'm not sure my work matters to anyone. I move money around, write reports, attend meetings, but I can't point to anything and say, I fixed that. I made that person's day better. What you do? It's real. It helps people. Before Marcus could respond, Rosa called out, Marcus, honey, could you come look at something? As he walked away, Lottie wandered over to a corner of the garage where a car sat under a cover. Something about its silhouette looked familiar. She pulled back a corner of the tarp and gasped. It was her mother's car. The classic convertible Elizabeth Hale had loved. The one that had been sitting in storage for 12 years. The one her father had mentioned restoring but never seemed to have time for. That's a beautiful car, Marcus said, appearing beside her. It's my mother's. Lottie's voice was barely a whisper. I can't believe it's here. Your father brought it in about a year ago. We've been doing a complete restoration. Engine, interior, paint. It's been a labor of love. He never told me. She ran her fingers along the smooth fender, remembering summer drives with the top down, her mother laughing as the wind whipped through her hair. How much longer? Another month, maybe 2. We're waiting on some custom interior pieces. Marcus pulled the cover back further. Would you like to see what we've done so far? He opened the driver's side door and Lottie leaned in. The seats had been reupholstered in cream leather that looked exactly like the original. The dashboard gleamed with fresh chrome. It smelled like her childhood, leather and her mother's perfume somehow still lingering after all these years. There's something in the glove compartment that your father asked us to keep safe, Marcus said softly. Lottie opened it with trembling fingers, and found a folded piece of paper in her mother's handwriting. She recognized the elegant script immediately. "For my darling Charlotte," she read aloud, her voice thick with emotion. "This car has taken me on so many adventures, and someday I hope it will do the same for you. Remember to drive with joy, stop for ice cream, and always choose the scenic route. Love makes every journey worthwhile. All my love, Mom." Tears spilled down Lottie's cheeks before she could stop them. She pressed the note to her chest, overwhelmed by the feeling that her mother was somehow there with her. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I didn't expect. It's just been so long since I felt close to her." Marcus handed her a clean shop rag. "Take your time." She wiped her eyes, embarrassed by her tears, but somehow not ashamed of them. "You've done beautiful work. She would have loved seeing it like this." "We're honored to work on it. Cars like this have stories. They deserve to be treated with respect." "Like people," Lottie said, meeting his eyes. "Like people," he agreed. Rosa appeared in the doorway. "Honey, your estimate's ready. $240 for the sensor replacement, including labor. We can have it done by this afternoon if you want to leave it." "That would be perfect." Lottie carefully folded her mother's note and put it back in the glove compartment. "Would it be okay if I stopped by occasionally to see how the restoration is going?" "Of course," Marcus said. "Though if you're planning to make this a regular thing, you might want to bring coffee. Rosa's got a serious habit, and the vending machine coffee here could strip paint." Rosa swatted his arm playfully. "My coffee standards are perfectly reasonable, thank you very much." The easy banter between them made Lottie smile. When was the last time she'd been around people who joked with each other, who seemed to genuinely enjoy their work and each other's company? "I'll remember that," she said. "Coffee for Rosa? What about you?" "Black coffee's fine, but you don't need to bring me anything." "What if I want to?" Marcus looked surprised by the question, then pleased. "Then I guess I wouldn't say no." As Lottie filled out the paperwork for the repair, she found herself watching Marcus work. He moved with quiet confidence, explaining things to a younger mechanic with patience. When an elderly customer came in asking about a strange noise, Marcus listened carefully and offered to take a quick look even though the man wasn't technically scheduled. This was real kindness, she realized. Not the polite smiles and charity galas of her world, but genuine care for other people. The kind her mother had shown every day. "We'll call you when it's ready," Rosa said, handing her a receipt. "Thank you, both of you." Lottie hesitated at the door. "Marcus, yesterday you told me to drive safe. I want you to know I heard you. Really heard you." Walking back to her rideshare pickup point, Lottie felt lighter somehow. The apology had been harder than she'd expected, but also more freeing. For the first time in years, she'd said exactly what she meant without worrying about how it sounded or what people would think. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "How did it go?" Instead of typing a response, Lottie called her. "Well?" Nina answered on the first ring. "I apologized. He was gracious about it. More gracious than I deserved. And my mother's car is there. Dad's having it restored, and they've done beautiful work. I found a note from Mom in the glove compartment. Nina, it was like she was talking directly to me." "What did it say?" Lottie recited the note from memory, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Love makes every journey worthwhile." "Oh, honey, that's beautiful." "I think she'd be proud of me for apologizing. Maybe not proud of needing to apologize in the first place, but proud that I found the courage to do it." "I'm proud of you too. So what happens now?" Lottie looked back at the garage, where she could see Marcus and Rosa working together like a well-oiled team. I think I'm going to start taking the scenic route. That evening, she called her father to let him know about the car repair. But as they talked, she found herself holding back the part about seeing her mother's convertible. Something about the moment felt too precious to share just yet, like a small flame that needed protection to keep burning. I'm glad Delgado worked out, Victor said. They're good people, honest. They are, she agreed, thinking of Marcus's patient explanation of the repair. Rosa's genuine warmth, the way they'd both given her space to grieve without making her feel foolish. Dad, why didn't you tell me about Mom's car? There was a long pause. I suppose I wanted it to be a surprise. For your 30th birthday, or maybe your wedding day. Something special. It's already special. Just knowing it exists, that you haven't forgotten. I could never forget, sweetheart. Neither should you. After they hung up, Lottie made herself a simple dinner and ate it standing at her kitchen window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow she would return to Hale Industries, to board meetings and quarterly reports and the careful dance of corporate politics. But tonight, she let herself think about scenic routes and stopping for ice cream, about mechanics with kind eyes, and the possibility that love really did make every journey worthwhile. Friday afternoon brought the call Lottie had been waiting for. Rosa's cheerful voice came through her office phone just as she was finishing up a contract review. Honey, your car is ready. Marcus says she's running like a dream. I'll be there in an hour, Lottie said, already reaching for her purse. The drive to Delgado Auto felt different this time. Instead of dreading the encounter, she found herself looking forward to it. She'd stopped at the bakery down the street from her office and picked up coffee and pastries for the whole team. A small gesture, but one that felt important. The garage was busier than before, with all 3 service bays occupied. Through the windows, she could see Marcus working under the hood of a sedan, his movements precise and focused. Rosa spotted her first and waved her over to the counter. Perfect timing, Rosa said. Marcus just finished the final check on your car. Lottie set the bakery box on the counter. I brought coffee and some pastries. A small thank you for taking such good care of everything. Rosa's eyes lit up. Honey, you didn't need to do that, but I'm not going to turn down good coffee. She called out to the garage. Marcus, coffee delivery. He emerged from under the hood, wiping his hands on a rag. When he saw the bakery box, something shifted in his expression, surprise, then what might have been pleasure. That's very thoughtful, he said. Let me get your keys and we'll take your car for a test drive to make sure everything's running smoothly. They walked outside together, and Marcus handed her the keys. Would you like to drive, or should I? You drive, Lottie said. I trust your judgment. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Marcus glanced over at her. How long have you lived in the city? All my life. Born at Mercy General, grew up in the Heights, went to college back east, then came home to work for my father. She realized how scripted that sounded. What about you? Moved here about 6 years ago from Atlanta. My sister lives here with her kids, and I wanted to be closer to family. That's nice. Are you close with your sister? Marcus smiled, and she was beginning to recognize how it changed his whole face. Very. She's a teacher at Roosevelt Elementary. Single mom, works harder than anyone I know. Her kids are 8 and 10. They keep me on my toes when I babysit. The picture he painted was so different from her own family dynamic. When had she last spent real time with her father? That wasn't about business. When had they last talked about anything that mattered? Listen to that, Marcus said, accelerating gently. Smooth as silk. No more grinding, no hesitation. She's happy now. You talk about cars like they're people. Aren't they? In a way. They all have personalities, quirks. This one's refined, likes to be treated with respect. Some cars are scrappy fighters, others are gentle giants. You learn to read them. Lottie found herself really listening, caught by the affection in his voice. What kind of personality does my mother's car have? Ah, Marcus said, turning back toward the shop. She's a lady, elegant, but with a wild heart, built for adventure but never loses her grace. Your mom had good taste. She did, in everything. Lottie paused. Marcus, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Yesterday, you said people say things they don't mean when they're stressed. But what if someone keeps saying things like that? What if it's not just stress, but how they really think? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering. I think most people are capable of change if they really want it. The question is whether they're willing to do the work. What kind of work? Honest work. Looking at yourself clearly, even when you don't like what you see. Listening to people who are different from you. Questioning the things you've always assumed were true. He pulled back into the Delgado Auto parking lot. But I don't think that's your real question. Lottie felt exposed, like he could see right through her carefully constructed exterior. What do you think my real question is? I think you're asking whether I believe you can change, whether yesterday was just words or the beginning of something different. The directness of his answer took her breath away. In her world, everything was carefully diplomatic, layered with subtext and careful phrasing. Marcus spoke like someone who'd learned that honesty was simpler than games. You're right, she admitted. That is what I'm asking. He turned off the engine and looked at her directly. I think you showed courage yesterday by apologizing. And I think you showed character by how you reacted to seeing your mother's car. But the real test isn't what you say when you're trying to make up for a mistake. It's what you do when no one's watching, when there's nothing in it for you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of his words settling between them. The car's perfect, Lottie said finally. Thank you for taking such good care of it. Anytime. As they walked back toward the building, Lottie found herself not wanting the conversation to end. Marcus, would it be okay if I came by tomorrow morning to see how the restoration is coming along? Of course. We're usually here by 8. I'll bring better coffee than the vending machine stuff. Rosa will love you forever. Inside, Rosa was already pouring herself a cup from the thermos Lottie had brought. This is the good stuff, she declared. Honey, you're welcome here anytime. As Lottie paid for the repair, she found herself studying the photos on Rosa's desk. Family pictures, shots of the team at various shop events, before and after photos of restored cars. It looked like a life built on genuine relationships rather than networking opportunities. Rosa, she said impulsively, how long have you owned this shop? 15 years this December. Started with just me and one mechanic in a smaller space down the street. Now look at us. She gestured proudly toward the busy garage. It's not fancy, but it's honest work with good people. It shows. Everyone here seems happy. Life's too short to spend it with people who don't care about each other, Rosa said simply. We're family here. Walking back to her car, Lottie felt that familiar tug of longing. When had she last felt like part of a real family, rather than just playing a role in her father's plans? Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. How's the car? Perfect. I'm coming back to the office now. Good, because your dad wants to see you before you leave today. Something about tomorrow. Lottie sighed. Tomorrow was Saturday, which meant the charity gala, which meant Wesley Grant and careful small talk and pretending to be someone she was less and less sure she wanted to be. The drive back downtown felt like traveling between two different worlds. From the genuine warmth of Delgado Auto to the cool marble and steel of Hale Tower. From Marcus's direct honesty to her father's careful political calculations. Victor's office occupied the entire corner of the 42nd floor, with windows overlooking the harbor. He looked up from his computer as she knocked on the open door. "Charlotte, perfect timing. How did the car repair go?" "Exactly as promised. Marcus knows what he's doing." "Good." Victor gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I wanted to confirm tomorrow evening's arrangements. Wesley will pick you up at 7. The Hendersons will be there, and the Morrison group, so wear something that photographs well." "Dad, about Wesley." "He's a good man, Charlotte. Stable, from a good family. The kind of partner who'll support your role in the company." Lottie felt something rebellious stir in her chest. What if I don't want a partner who's chosen based on how he'll photograph? Victor's eyebrows rose slightly. "What do you want then?" The question hung in the air between them. What did she want? A week ago, she would have given the expected answer about stability and shared goals. But sitting here now, with Marcus's words still echoing in her mind, she found herself thinking about different things. "I want someone who sees me," she said finally. "Not just the role I play or the name I carry, but me, who I really am underneath all this." "And you don't think Wesley sees you?" Lottie considered the question honestly. Wesley was perfectly pleasant, always polite, never demanding. But in all their carefully orchestrated dates, had they ever had a conversation that mattered? Had he ever asked her what she really thought about anything important? "I think Wesley sees exactly what you want him to see. The perfect daughter, the ideal corporate wife, the safe choice." She met her father's gaze. "But what if I'm not that person anymore? What if I want to be someone different?" Victor leaned back in his chair, studying her. "This is about more than Wesley, isn't it?" "Maybe." "Charlotte, you're 27 years old. You've worked hard to build a reputation in this industry. Don't throw that away chasing some romantic fantasy. Is wanting authenticity really just a fantasy? Authenticity is a luxury you can afford because of the stability your position provides. Don't take that for granted." The conversation felt familiar, like variations they'd had before about duty and responsibility and maintaining appearances. But something had shifted in Lottie, some fundamental understanding of what mattered. "I'll go to the gala," she said finally. "But Dad, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not anymore. Not for Wesley, not for business contacts, not even for you." Victor's expression softened slightly. "Your mother said something similar to me once, early in our marriage, that she wouldn't be anyone's accessory, even mine." "What did you tell her?" "That I fell in love with who she was, not who I thought she should be. And that if I ever made her feel like she had to choose between being herself and being with me, I'd already lost what mattered most." The admission surprised Lottie. Her parents had always seemed so aligned, so perfectly matched. She'd never considered that they might have had to work to understand each other. "I miss her," she said softly. "So do I. Every day." Victor was quiet for a moment. "She would tell you to follow your heart, you know, even if it scared me." "And what would you tell me?" "To be careful, to think with your head as well as your heart. But also," he paused, looking out at the harbor, "to not settle for less than real love, even if it's more complicated than the safe choice." Leaving her father's office, Lottie felt like she was carrying pieces of two different conversations. The practical one about galas and appropriate partners, and the deeper one about authenticity and love. As she drove home through the evening traffic, she found herself thinking about tomorrow. She would go to the gala with Wesley because she'd given her word. But she wouldn't pretend it was more than it was. A business obligation, not a romantic possibility. And maybe, just maybe, she'd find the courage to start making choices based on who she wanted to become, rather than who she'd always been. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Change was never easy, especially when you'd spent your whole life being exactly what everyone expected. But as she thought about Marcus's steady confidence and her mother's note about choosing the scenic route, she realized that safe wasn't the same as right. Tomorrow would come regardless. The question was whether she'd meet it as the person she'd always been, or begin the work of becoming someone new. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of golden light that made everything look like a painting. Lottie woke early, her mind already turning to the evening's gala, but she found herself thinking more about her promise to visit Delgado Auto than about what dress to wear. She stopped at a coffee shop she'd never tried before, one that Nina had recommended in a neighborhood she rarely visited. The barista was a college student with paint-stained fingers who made conversation while preparing her order. "You're going to love the Ethiopian blend," the girl said, carefully arranging 4 cups in a carrier. "And Rosa's going to flip over these almond croissants. My mom makes them fresh every morning." "You know Rosa?" "She comes in every Wednesday for our weekly special. Always asks about my art classes, remembers what I'm working on. She's good." People. Driving toward Delgado Auto with the coffee growing cold and the morning sun warming her face, Lottie realized this was the first Saturday in months that she hadn't spent working or attending some obligatory social function. It felt like playing hooky, except she was an adult who could choose how to spend her own time. The shop's parking lot was quieter than during the week, with only Marcus's pickup truck and Rosa's sedan visible. Through the open bay doors, she could hear the sound of tools and quiet conversation. "Well, look who's here," Rosa called out as Lottie approached with her coffee carrier and pastry box. "And bearing gifts again. Marcus, your favorite customer's back." Marcus appeared from behind her mother's convertible, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Morning, Charlotte. How's the car running?" "Like a dream, just like you promised." She handed him one of the coffees. "I brought the good stuff this time." "Ethiopian," he said, taking a sip. "Nice choice. The barista said you'd appreciate it. Apparently Rosa's a regular customer there." Rosa laughed. "That girl Sophia makes the best coffee in the city, and she's working her way through art school, one latte at a time. Reminds me of myself 20 years ago." They settled into comfortable conversation while Rosa and Marcus took a break from their morning work. Lottie learned that Rosa had started as a bookkeeper at another shop before saving up to buy this place, that Marcus had originally planned to be an engineer before falling in love with hands-on restoration work. "What made you change direction?" she asked him. Marcus leaned against the workbench, considering his answer. "I was good at the theory, but it felt disconnected from real life. Too much time in front of computers, not enough time actually building something with my hands. My grandfather was a mechanic, taught me to work on engines when I was a kid. After he died, I realized I wanted to honor that knowledge, not let it go to waste." "Do you ever regret giving up engineering?" "Not for a minute. This work feeds my soul in ways sitting in an office never could." He gestured toward her mother's car. "Like this restoration. Every piece we replace, every system we rebuild, we're bringing something beautiful back to life. There's poetry in that." Lottie found herself moved by the passion in his voice. When had she last felt that way about anything? When had work felt like more than just obligation? "Can I see what you've done since Thursday?" she asked. Marcus led her over to the convertible, pulling back the cover with obvious pride. The car gleamed under the shop lights, its deep blue paint looking fresh and perfect. He opened the hood to show her the rebuilt engine, explaining each component with the same care he'd used to describe her sensor repair. "The interior's almost finished," he said, opening the passenger door. "We found the original color scheme in some old photos. your father provided. The seats were a rich cream leather with blue piping that matched the exterior perfectly. Everything looked exactly as Lottie remembered from childhood. The elegant dashboard, the chrome details, even the small compass built into the center console. "It's perfect," she whispered, running her fingers along the steering wheel. It's exactly how she kept it. Your father was very specific about authenticity. He brought us dozens of photos, wanted every detail to be right. He loved this car almost as much as she did. They used to take weekend drives up the coast, just the two of them. Lottie settled into the driver's seat, and suddenly she was 8 years old again, riding with the top down while her parents sang along to the radio. I haven't thought about those trips in years. What made them stop? Life, I suppose. Work got busier, I got more involved in school activities. Then Mom died, and Dad just put the car away. Like he put away a lot of things that reminded him of her. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Grief makes people do strange things sometimes. Maybe he's ready to remember now. Maybe we both are. Rosa appeared beside the car, wiping grease from her hands. "Honey, you should take it for a drive when we're finished. Cars like this, they're meant to be driven, not just admired." "Would that be okay?" "More than okay," Marcus said. "It would be an honor." The morning passed quickly as they worked and talked. Lottie found herself helping where she could, holding tools, fetching parts, learning the names of engine components she'd never cared about before. Her hands got dirty, and she didn't mind. Her clothes picked up the smell of motor oil and metal, and somehow it felt right. "You're a natural at this," Rosa observed as Lottie successfully identified a wrench by size. "I think I just like learning how things work. I spent so many years in abstract business theory, I forgot how satisfying it is to understand something concrete." Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Dress fitting at 2 p.m. for tonight. Don't forget." Reality crashed back over her like cold water. The gala. Wesley. The careful performance she'd agreed to give one more time. "I should probably go," she said reluctantly. "I have obligations this evening." "Anything fun?" Marcus asked, not looking up from the carburetor he was adjusting. "A charity gala, black tie, important people, carefully scripted conversations about tax benefits and networking opportunities." "Sounds formal." "It's exactly as boring as it sounds," she admitted. "But my father's expecting me to go with someone he approves of, so—" Marcus's hands stilled on his work. "Someone he approves of?" "Wesley Grant. He's—" Lottie searched for words that felt honest. "Safe, predictable, everything my father thinks I should want in a partner." "And what do you think you should want?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither of them had quite acknowledged yet. Rosa busied herself with organizing tools, giving them the illusion of privacy. "I'm starting to think I've been asking the wrong questions," Lottie said finally. "Instead of what I should want, maybe I should figure out what I actually want." Marcus looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt something shift in the space between them. Not the careful politeness of their earlier interactions, but something warmer and more dangerous. "That sounds like a good place to start," he said quietly. The drive back to her apartment felt like traveling between worlds again. From the honest warmth of the garage to the air-conditioned perfection of her high-rise, from Marcus's direct gaze to the prospect of Wesley's polite attention. Nina was waiting with garment bags and jewelry boxes, ready to transform Lottie into the perfect corporate princess for the evening's performance. "You're glowing," Nina observed as they laid out dress options. "Good morning?" "Really good. Nina, can I ask you something? Have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life?" Nina paused in her inspection of a navy evening gown. "What brought this on?" "Watching Marcus work this morning. He talks about his job like it's a calling, not just a way to pay bills. When was the last time I felt passionate about anything I was doing? Honey, most people don't get to follow their passion for work. Most of us just do what we're good at and find meaning where we can. But what if you could? What if you could choose work that fed your soul instead of just meeting expectations? Nina sat down on the bed, studying Lottie's face. This is about more than work, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe. Lottie picked up her mother's pearls from the jewelry box, remembering how Elizabeth had worn them to every important occasion. I keep thinking about something Mom wrote in that note Marcus found, about choosing the scenic route, about love making every journey worthwhile. And you don't think Wesley makes your journey worthwhile? Wesley makes my father's journey worthwhile. He fits into the plan Dad has for my life. But I'm starting to wonder if that plan was ever really mine. Nina was quiet for a long moment. You know, when I first started working for you, I thought you had everything figured out. Perfect life, perfect future, everything mapped out. But lately, you seem more real, like you're finally asking the questions that matter. Is that good or bad? I think it's necessary. But Lottie, change is scary, and it's usually messy. Are you ready for messy? Looking at herself in the mirror as Nina helped her into the evening gown, Lottie saw someone who looked exactly like she was supposed to look. Polished, elegant, appropriate. But behind the careful makeup and designer dress, she could see something new in her own eyes. A question that hadn't been there before. I don't know if I'm ready, she said honestly. But I don't think I have a choice anymore. I can't unknow what I know now. And what's that? That there's a difference between the life you're supposed to want and the life that actually makes you happy. As Nina put the finishing touches on her appearance, Lottie found herself thinking about Marcus's hands on engine parts, the way his face lit up when he talked about restoration, the directness of his questions, and the honesty of his answers. She thought about her mother's note and scenic routes, and the possibility that love really could make every journey worthwhile. Tonight, she would play her part one more time. But tomorrow? Tomorrow she might start choosing the scenic route instead of the expected one. The thought both thrilled and terrified her, but it felt more real than anything she'd felt in years. The mirror reflected someone who looked ready for anything the evening might bring. The question was whether that someone was still Charlotte Hale, dutiful daughter and corporate heiress, or someone altogether new. The charity gala at the Grand Harbor Hotel was everything Lottie had expected. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, and conversations that danced around money without ever mentioning actual numbers. She stood beside Wesley in the reception area, her hand resting lightly on his arm as they made the rounds of carefully orchestrated small talk. You look beautiful tonight, Wesley said quietly as they moved between groups of guests. His compliment was sincere, but felt rehearsed, like something he'd practiced in the mirror. Thank you. Lottie smiled politely, the expression automatic after years of these events. But her mind kept drifting to the morning at Delgado Auto, to Marcus's hands rebuilding her mother's engine with reverent care. Victor appeared beside them, impeccable in his tuxedo. Charlotte, Wesley, perfect timing. The Hendersons would like to meet you both. As they approached a distinguished older couple, Lottie caught fragments of conversation from nearby groups: stock prices, vacation homes, children at prestigious universities. The same topics that had filled every gala she'd attended since she was old enough to wear evening gowns. Mrs. Henderson, Victor said warmly, I'd like you to meet my daughter Charlotte and her companion, Wesley Grant. Mrs. Henderson's eyes lit up with recognition. Oh, the Grant family. Your father and I served on the museum board together for years. Lovely man. Thank you, Wesley replied smoothly. He speaks very highly of your work with the Arts Foundation. The conversation continued in predictable patterns: family connections, shared acquaintances, carefully veiled assessments of social standing. Lottie had performed this dance so many times she could do it without thinking, which left her mind free to wander to more interesting places. Charlotte's been instrumental in our recent expansion, Victor was saying. The Morrison deal alone will bring in $12 million over the next 3 years. Impressive, Mr. Henderson nodded approvingly. It's wonderful to see young women taking leadership roles in family businesses. Lottie forced herself to focus on the conversation, but something felt different tonight. The praise that usually filled her with pride now felt hollow. When had she stopped caring about impressing people she barely knew with accomplishments that felt increasingly meaningless? "If you'll excuse me," she said during a lull in conversation. "I think I'll get some air." The hotel's terrace overlooked the harbor, where boats bobbed gently in their slips. The cool night air felt good against her skin after the warmth of the crowded ballroom. She pulled out her phone, not really intending to call anyone, just needing a moment away from the performance. A message notification caught her attention. A text from an unknown number that had come in an hour ago. "Hi, Charlotte. This is Marcus. Rosa gave me your number. Hope your evening is going well. The car's ready for a test drive whenever you are." She stared at the message, surprised by how much it lifted her spirits. While she'd been making polite conversation about tax benefits and quarterly projections, Marcus had been putting the finishing touches on her mother's car. Real work. Work that mattered. "There you are?" Wesley's voice interrupted her thoughts. He stepped onto the terrace, adjusting his cufflinks with characteristic precision. "Everything all right?" "Just needed some air. It's stuffy in there." Wesley moved to stand beside her at the railing, following her gaze out over the water. "You seem distracted tonight. Anything I can help with?" The question was asked with genuine concern, and Lottie felt a pang of guilt. Wesley really was a good man, kind, reliable, everything her father said he was. It wasn't his fault that being with him felt like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. "Wesley," she said carefully, "can I ask you something? What do you want from life? Really want, not just what you're supposed to want." He seemed surprised by the question. "I suppose security, success, a family, eventually, the things most people want." "But what makes you happy? What do you do just for the joy of it?" Wesley was quiet for a moment, considering. "I enjoy sailing. There's something peaceful about being on the water. Just you and the wind and the horizon." His voice warmed slightly. "What about you?" Lottie thought about the morning at the garage, about getting her hands dirty and learning how engines worked, about the satisfaction of understanding something concrete and real. "I'm still figuring that out." Before Wesley could respond, the terrace doors opened and several other guests stepped outside. Among them was David Morrison, one of the board members from her father's company, along with his wife, Sarah. "Charlotte!" Sarah Morrison approached with the enthusiastic smile of someone who'd had just enough wine to loosen her usual reserve. "We were just talking about you inside. David told everyone about that dramatic rescue last weekend." "Rescue?" Wesley turned to look at Lottie with raised eyebrows. David Morrison laughed. "Apparently our Charlotte had quite the adventure. Car broke down on the highway, had to be saved by some heroic mechanic. Very romantic, like something out of a movie." Lottie felt heat rush to her cheeks. "It wasn't dramatic at all, just a simple car repair." "Oh, but the way the story's been told," Sarah continued, seemingly oblivious to Lottie's discomfort. "You'd think it was a scene from a romance novel. Damsel in distress, rugged hero, sparks flying on the side of the road." "Sarah?" her husband warned gently, finally noticing Lottie's expression. But the damage was done. Wesley's face had taken on a carefully neutral expression that Lottie recognized. The look of someone who'd just learned something they didn't expect and wasn't quite sure how to process it. "I should get back inside," Lottie said quickly. "Dad will be wondering where I am." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and stilted conversation. Wesley remained perfectly polite, but something had shifted between them. The easy companionship they'd shared earlier felt strained now, loaded with unspoken questions. During the auction portion of the evening, Lottie found herself thinking about the stories people told and how they grew in the telling. By the time Sarah Morrison's version reached other ears, Marcus would probably be portrayed as some kind of movie star mechanic, and her breakdown would become an epic romantic rescue. The truth was so much simpler and, somehow, more meaningful. Marcus had been kind to a stranger who needed help. He'd refused payment and made sure she was safe. But in her world, even simple kindness became gossip fodder, something to be whispered about and embellished for entertainment. $5,000! Someone called out during the art auction, and polite applause filled the room. Lottie applauded along with everyone else, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about different kinds of value, the worth of an expensive painting that would hang in someone's private collection versus the worth of skilled hands that could bring a broken engine back to life. Both had value, but only one felt essential. When the evening finally ended, Wesley walked her to the valet station where their cars waited. "Thank you for a lovely evening," he said formally. "Wesley, about what Sarah said earlier?" "Charlotte." He held up a gentle hand. "You don't owe me any explanations. We haven't made any commitments to each other." The careful politeness in his voice told her everything she needed to know. Whatever small spark might have existed between them had been extinguished by gossip and assumption. "You're a good man," she said softly. "You deserve someone who's all in, not someone who's just going through the motions." Wesley smiled, and for the first time all evening it looked completely genuine. "So do you. And Charlotte, for what it's worth, I hope your mechanic is half the hero Sarah Morrison thinks he is." Driving home through the empty streets, Lottie felt a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. The evening that was supposed to solidify her relationship with Wesley had instead ended it, not with drama or harsh words, but with the quiet recognition that they'd both been playing parts that didn't quite fit. Her phone, sitting in the passenger seat, buzzed with another message. This one was from her father. "Hope the evening went well. Wesley seems like good company." She didn't respond immediately. How could she explain that Wesley was indeed good company, just not for her? How could she tell her father that she was starting to question everything he'd taught her about what mattered in life? Instead, she found herself scrolling back to Marcus's earlier message. "The car's ready for a test drive whenever you are." It was nearly midnight on a Saturday, far too late to text someone she barely knew. But something about the message felt like an invitation to something more than just a car ride. It felt like an invitation to choose the scenic route her mother had written about, even if she wasn't sure where it might lead. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would call Marcus and take her mother's car for its first real drive in over a decade. Tonight had been about endings, the end of pretending that Wesley was the answer, the end of going through the motions of a life that didn't quite fit. But tomorrow could be about beginnings. As she pulled into her parking garage, Lottie caught sight of herself in the rearview mirror. Her careful makeup was still perfect, her hair still smooth, but something in her eyes had changed. For the first time in years, she looked like someone with questions instead of someone with all the answers. It was a start. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, The kind of day that made everything seem possible. Lottie woke with an unusual sense of anticipation, her mind immediately turning to Marcus's text about the car being ready for a test drive. She dressed simply, jeans, a soft cotton sweater, and sneakers that could handle walking on gravel or grass. For the first time in months, she wasn't dressing for anyone's expectations but her own. The drive to Delgado Auto felt like a pilgrimage. She stopped at the coffee shop again, this time chatting with Sophia about her latest art project, a series of paintings inspired by the working people of the neighborhood. "There's something beautiful about hands that build things," Sophia said as she prepared Lottie's order. "My mom always says you can tell a person's character by looking at their hands." At the shop, she found Marcus alone in the garage, the morning sun streaming through the open bay doors and casting everything in golden light. He looked up from a clipboard as she entered, and his smile was warmer than she'd ever seen it. "Perfect timing," he said. "I just finished the final inspection. She's ready for her first real drive in years." Her mother's convertible sat gleaming in the center of the bay, its deep blue paint reflecting the morning light. Marcus had positioned it so the sun caught every perfect detail. The chrome bumpers, the cream leather seats, the elegant lines that spoke of an era when cars were built like art. "She's beautiful," Lottie whispered, approaching the car like it might disappear if she moved too quickly. "Want to take her out?" Marcus dangled the keys. "Rosa's covering for me this morning. I thought we could take a proper test drive up the coast highway." The offer surprised her. "You don't have to do that. I'm sure you have other things." "Charlotte." He said her name quietly, and something in his tone made her look at him directly. "I'd like to spend time with you. Not because it's my job, not because you're a customer, because I'd like to get to know you better." The honesty in his words took her breath away. In her world, intentions were always layered with subtext and careful calculation. Marcus spoke like someone who meant exactly what he said. "I'd like that too," she admitted. Marcus opened the driver's door for her with a small flourish. "Your chariot awaits." Settling into the driver's seat felt like coming home. The leather was soft under her hands, broken in by thousands of miles her mother had driven. The steering wheel felt familiar, as if muscle memory could reach across the years. "How does she feel?" Marcus asked, sliding into the passenger seat. "Like Mom's still here somehow." Lottie adjusted the rear view mirror and caught sight of her own eyes, bright with unshed tears. "Thank you for bringing her back to life." "Your father brought her back to life. I just helped with the technical details." As they pulled out of the garage, Lottie marveled at how smooth everything felt. The engine purred with quiet power. The steering was responsive but not harsh, and the convertible top was down, letting the morning breeze play through her hair. "Where to?" she asked as they reached the main road. "North on Highway 1. There's a scenic overlook about 20 miles up where we can stop and make sure everything's running properly." The drive was magical in a way Lottie hadn't experienced since childhood. With the wind in her hair and Marcus beside her, she felt more alive than she had in years. They talked easily as the miles passed, about music, about places they'd traveled, about the small moments that made life worth living. "Tell me about your mother," Marcus said as they rounded a curve that offered a breathtaking view of the ocean. "She was luminous. That's the word that always comes to mind. She lit up every room she entered, but not in a demanding way. She just made everyone around her feel like they mattered." Lottie shifted gears smoothly, delighting in the car's responsive transmission. "She volunteered at a children's hospital, organized food drives, remembered the names of every person who worked in our building. She saw people. Like you're learning to do." The observation was gentle but pointed. You think I'm learning to see people? I think you're learning to see yourself. And once you do that, really seeing other people becomes easier. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in thought. The coastal highway curved and climbed, offering spectacular views of the Pacific stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Other cars passed them, but Lottie felt like they were in their own private world. There, Marcus pointed to a pullout ahead. Perfect spot to check how she's handling the grades. The scenic overlook was deserted except for a few seagulls and the endless sound of waves against rocks far below. Marcus walked around the car, checking fluid levels and listening to the engine while Lottie stood at the guardrail, breathing in the salt air. Everything sounds perfect, he reported. How did she feel on the hills? Powerful, confident, like she remembers what she was built for. Road trips and adventures. Exactly. Lottie turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close he was standing. The wind had ruffled his dark hair, and there was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not just kindness, but something warmer and more personal. Charlotte, he said softly, can I ask you something? Of course. Last night, at your gala, was that the life you want, really want? The question hung between them like a challenge. She thought about the careful conversations, the performed politeness, the way everything felt scripted and hollow. No, she said finally. I don't think it is. But it's the life I know how to live. It's what's expected. What if expectations don't matter? What if the only person you had to please was yourself? I don't know if I know how to do that. Marcus stepped closer, and she could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Maybe you could learn. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Lottie felt like she was standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. One step forward would change everything. One step back would keep her safe in the life she'd always known. Marcus, she whispered. Yeah? I'm scared. Of what? Of wanting something I'm not supposed to want. Of disappointing people who matter to me. Of not being brave enough to change. He reached up and gently touched her cheek, his work-roughened fingers surprisingly gentle. You drove out here this morning. You got your hands dirty learning about engines. You apologized when you didn't have to. You're braver than you think. When he kissed her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Soft and sweet at first, then deeper as she leaned into him. The ocean wind swirled around them, and the morning sun painted everything in shades of gold and possibility. When they finally broke apart, Lottie felt breathless and transformed. She'd been kissed before, of course, but never like this. Never with the sense that the person kissing her saw exactly who she was and wanted her anyway. Wow, she managed. Marcus smiled, the expression lighting up his whole face. Yeah, wow. They stood there for a long moment, hands linked, looking out at the endless ocean. Lottie felt like she could see her future spreading out before her. Not the careful, planned trajectory her father had mapped out, but something wilder and more honest. What happens now? She asked. Now we drive back, and I take you to lunch at this little place I know, and we keep getting to know each other. And after that? After that, we figure it out as we go. No scripts, no expectations, just us being honest with each other. The drive back felt different, charged with new understanding and possibility. They talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as easily as the car moved along the coastal highway. At a small roadside diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s, they shared fish and chips and talked about their dreams. I'd like to open my own restoration shop someday, Marcus said, stealing one of her French fries. Specialize in classic cars Maybe teach young people the trade. There's something about bringing old things back to life that feels important. What's stopping you? Money, mostly. Equipment costs, finding the right space, building a customer base. It's a big risk. Lottie found herself thinking about her trust fund, about the millions of dollars sitting in investments she barely paid attention to. For the first time, she could imagine using that money for something that mattered. Risk can be good sometimes, she said carefully. If it's for something you believe in. After lunch, they drove back to the shop with the top still down, taking the long way through neighborhoods Lottie had never explored. Marcus pointed out landmarks: the elementary school where his sister taught, the community center where he volunteered teaching car maintenance to teenagers, the park where his niece and nephew played soccer. It was a life built on relationships and community rather than status and wealth. It looked smaller than what Lottie was used to, but somehow more real. Back at Delgado Auto, they lingered beside her mother's car, neither quite ready for the day to end. "Thank you," Lottie said, "for the drive, for lunch, for everything. Thank you for trusting me with your mother's car, and for giving me a chance after Thursday. Thursday feels like a lifetime ago. People can change a lot in a few days, if they really want to." As Marcus covered the convertible with its protective tarp, Lottie felt her phone buzz with several missed messages. The real world was calling her back, but she felt stronger now, more certain of who she wanted to become. The first message was from Nina. "How was the morning? You look happy in your location photos." Location photos? Lottie frowned and checked her social media. Someone had tagged her in several photos from the scenic overlook, images of her and Marcus by the car, their body language clearly intimate even from a distance. The captions were playful but pointed. Charlotte Hale finding love in unexpected places, and when life breaks down, sometimes it leads you exactly where you need to be. Her heart sank as she scrolled through the comments. Friends from her social circle were already chiming in with teasing remarks and speculation. By tomorrow, the photos would probably be all over the society pages. "Everything okay?" Marcus noticed her expression. "Someone photographed us this morning, posted it online." She showed him the screen, watching his face carefully. Marcus studied the photos with an unreadable expression. "How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, a week ago I would have been mortified. Today—" She looked at the images of herself laughing beside the car, looking genuinely happy for the first time in years. "Today I think I look like someone who's finally living her own life. And if your father sees these, your business associates, then I guess we'll find out what matters more to them, who I am or who they think I should be." Marcus smiled, but she could see concern in his eyes. "Charlotte, I need you to know something. I'm not interested in being anyone's secret or anyone's rebellion. If we're going to do this, it has to be real. It has to be something you're proud of, not something you're hiding." The directness of his words both thrilled and terrified her. "You're asking me to choose. I'm asking you to be honest, with yourself, with your family, with me." As Lottie drove home in her regular car, leaving her mother's convertible safely in the garage for now, she knew Marcus was right. The photos had forced the issue. By tomorrow, everyone in her world would know that Charlotte Hale had spent Sunday morning with a mechanic, looking happier than anyone had seen her in years. The question was what she would do about it. Her phone rang as she pulled into her building's garage. Her father's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Dad." "Charlotte, I've been getting some interesting phone calls this afternoon." Her stomach clenched. "About the photos?" "Among other things. I think we need to talk. Can you come to the house for dinner tonight?" The request was phrased politely, But Lottie recognized the tone. This wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. Of course. What time? 7. And Charlotte? Come alone. After he hung up, Lottie sat in her car for a long moment, gathering her courage. This was it. The moment when she would have to choose between the life she'd always known and the life she was beginning to want. She thought about Marcus's words. If we're going to do this, it has to be real. Real meant telling her father the truth. Real meant standing up for what she wanted instead of just accepting what was expected. Real meant risking everything comfortable and safe for the possibility of something authentic and meaningful. It was terrifying. It was necessary. It was time.